"If you find my son, I'll give you everything," said the judge. But the street kid already knew where he was. Judge Lawrence Harrison held the photo of his son with trembling hands when he felt the light touch on his arm. For 3 months, Tyler had disappeared without a trace, and the best private investigators couldn't find a single clue. That's when he turned and saw the boy. A dark-skinned boy with curly hair, no more than 10 years old, who always asked for quarters at the entrance of the courthouse. His eyes shone with a certainty that made the magistrate uncomfortable. "You're Tyler's father, right?" asked the boy, pointing to the photo. Lawrence instinctively recoiled. How did this child know his son's name? How did he know that photo was of Tyler? "Who are you? How do you know about my son?" "My name is Ethan." "And I know where Tyler is," said the boy with an enigmatic smile that made the judge's heart race. Lawrence looked around. Court employees hurried past through the marble corridors, oblivious to the drama unfolding there. His secretary Susan watched from the office door, clearly concerned about the approach of this dirty boy. "If you find my son, I'll give you everything," whispered Lawrence, surprised at his own words. Ethan shook his head slowly, as if he already knew this offer would come. "You don't need to give me anything, mister. You just need to listen to what I have to say." The word "mister" echoed strangely in Lawrence's mind. Why was this boy calling him that? "Speak. Please speak now," begged the judge, his voice breaking. "Tyler is okay. He's alive, healthy, eating well. But he doesn't want to come home." Lawrence felt his legs go weak. His son was alive but didn't want to come back? That didn't make sense. Tyler had everything: a luxurious house in Scarsdale, a brand new car, a generous allowance, the best private schools in New York City. "Where is he?" he demanded to know. "At the New Hope shelter over in the village. But there's something you need to know before you go there." Susan approached, interrupting the conversation. "Judge Harrison, you have a hearing in 15 minutes, and this boy shouldn't be inside here." "Let him speak, Susan," ordered Lawrence with an authority that surprised everyone. Ethan looked at the secretary with suspicion, then turned his attention back to Lawrence. "Can I speak with you alone?" Lawrence hesitated. All his experience as a magistrate screamed not to trust an unknown street kid. But the mention of Tyler's name, the certainty in the child's eyes, something inside him said this boy was telling the truth. "Susan, cancel my schedule for today." "But Judge, you have 3 important hearings and the meeting with—" "Cancel everything," repeated Lawrence more firmly. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. Susan gathered her things with a worried expression and withdrew, but not before casting a suspicious look at Ethan. When they were alone in the corridor, the boy took a deep breath. "Tyler told me everything about you, about how you demand top grades in everything, about the scolding when he gets a B instead of an A, about how you're always saying he has to be perfect because he's a judge's son." Each word was like a punch to Lawrence's stomach. It was true he always demanded excellence from Tyler, but it was for the boy's own good. The world was competitive, especially for someone who carried the Harrison name. "I only want what's best for him," murmured Lawrence. "You want to know why I know all this?" asked Ethan, ignoring the justification. Lawrence nodded, afraid of what would come next. "Because Tyler is my cousin, and you are my uncle." Lawrence's world collapsed. The boy's words echoed like a distant sound as he tried to process the information. "Uncle? What do you mean, uncle?" "That's impossible," he stammered. "My mother's name was Sarah Miller. You dated her when you were 22 before you started law school. She got pregnant with me, but you disappeared when you found out." Lawrence leaned against the wall, feeling the floor give way beneath his feet. Sarah. How could he forget Sarah? He was young, irresponsible, full of dreams about the future. When she said she was expecting a baby, he panicked. His family, traditional and conservative, would never accept it. His career was just beginning. Where is your mother?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "She passed when I was 5, heart failure. She always talked about you, always hoped that one day you would come looking for us." Lawrence closed his eyes, Feeling the weight of 30 years of cowardice crashing down on his shoulders, Sarah was gone, and he never knew he had a son living on the streets of New York City. "How did Tyler find out about you?" "He was rummaging through some old papers in your home office. He found some letters my mother sent when I was little, asking for help. You kept them all, but you never replied." The memories came back like an avalanche. Lawrence vaguely remembered receiving a few letters from Sarah in the first years after they parted ways. He had kept them in a desk drawer, promising himself he would reply someday. But days turned into months, months into years, and he never found the courage to face the past. Tyler was furious when he read the letters. He said he couldn't believe his father, who was always preaching about justice and doing the right thing, had abandoned a child. "He left home because of that?" Lawrence could barely speak. "He left because he decided to look for me. He thought I had vanished into the world, that maybe I wasn't even alive anymore. When he found me asking for money at the entrance to the courthouse, he couldn't believe the boy his father had abandoned was right there for years, right under your nose." Lawrence vaguely remembered seeing that boy several times, always asking for quarters at the entrance to the court. How many times had he walked past him without a second glance? How many times had he completely ignored the existence of his own nephew? "Where are you living?" "At the New Hope shelter. Mrs. Margaret, who runs the place, let Tyler stay when he showed up. He made up that his name was Justin Smith, said his parents had disappeared. No one suspected because he's smart, knows how to talk well." "I want to go there. I want to talk to him." Ethan shook his head. "He doesn't want to see you. He's still very angry. And Mrs. Margaret said that if you showed up there, I should tell you that Tyler doesn't want to be found. But he's a minor. I'm his father." "And I'm your son, too," Ethan replied with a simplicity that cut like a knife. But that never mattered before, did it? Lawrence found himself without an answer. How could he argue with a truth so raw and painful? "Why did you come talk to me? If Tyler doesn't want to see me, why are you here?" Ethan looked at his own bare feet, then raised his eyes with a maturity that didn't match his 10 years. "Because I've known Tyler for 2 months, and I see that he's sad. He talks badly about you all the time, but at night, when he thinks no one is looking, he cries. He misses you." "Then take me to him, please." "I can't. But there's one thing you can do." Lawrence leaned forward, grasping at any hope. "What do you want me to do?" "Go to the shelter, but not as Tyler's father. Go as my uncle. See the place where I live, meet the people who take care of me. Then Tyler will see that you've changed." The suggestion was at once simple and terrifying. Lawrence Harrison, a respected magistrate, a member of high society in New York City, going to a shelter on the outskirts as the uncle of a street kid. "Susan won't like this one bit," he murmured, more to himself. "Your secretary will try to convince you not to go. She'll say it's dangerous, that it doesn't suit your position. I know how these people think." Lawrence looked at Ethan with admiration. How could a 10-year-old boy have such insight into the adult world? "Will you take me there? If you promise one thing." "What?" "That you'll go with an open mind, that you won't judge the place, the people, the way we live, and that you won't try to take Tyler away by force." Lawrence hesitated. His first reaction was to ensure he would take Tyler home, no matter the cost, but something in Ethan's steady gaze made him reconsider. "I promise." "Then let's go. But first you need to change your clothes." Lawrence looked at his black robe, his Italian leather shoes, his silk tie. "Where am I going to change?" "There are some old clothes in my hideout nearby. You can't show up there dressed like that. Otherwise everyone will know you're important and will be afraid to tell the truth." 20 minutes later, Lawrence Harrison looked at himself in the mirror of the public restroom in the square in front of the courthouse. He was wearing a faded t-shirt, worn-out jeans, and a pair of borrowed sneakers with holes, all from Ethan. For the first time in decades, he felt completely out of his comfort zone. "Ready?" asked Ethan, who was waiting outside. "Ready," replied Lawrence, still getting used to the strange clothes. The journey to the village was a true voyage of discovery. Ethan knew shortcuts Lawrence never imagined existed, narrow streets where his luxury sedan would never pass, alleys that connected neighborhoods in ways that defied urban logic. Along the way, Ethan told him more about his life, how he learned to survive on the streets after his mother left, How he ended up at the courthouse steps because someone said there were people with money there. How he recognized Lawrence the first time he saw him because Sarah had kept an old photo of her boyfriend. My mother always said you were a good man, just confused. She never spoke ill of you in front of me. Lawrence felt a lump in his throat grow with each word. Sarah had been more generous to him in his abandonment than he deserved. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. When they arrived at the New Hope shelter, Lawrence was surprised. He expected to find a run-down, dirty, depressing place. Instead, he saw a large, well-kept house with a garden in front where several children were playing. The walls were colorful. There were children's drawings decorating the windows, and lively music could be heard from inside. This is it, said Ethan. Mrs. Margaret is there on the porch. Lawrence followed Ethan's gaze and saw a woman of about 50, with graying hair in a bun, wearing a floral apron. She was talking to two small children and smiling in a genuine way Lawrence hadn't seen in a long time. Mrs. Margaret, shouted Ethan, I brought a visitor. The woman looked up and her smile remained, but Lawrence noticed a slight tension as she assessed him. Ethan, dear, where have you been? I was worried. Sorry, Mrs. Margaret. This is Lawrence. He's a relative of mine. Lawrence felt the weight of the woman's investigative gaze. Even dressed simply, she seemed to sense there was something different about him. A relative? Asked Margaret, approaching. He's my uncle, Ethan said quickly. He came to see where I live. Margaret extended her hand to Lawrence, who shook it carefully. The woman had calloused hands from someone who worked hard, but her handshake was firm and warm. Welcome, Lawrence. Ethan told us you had no family. It's a complicated story, murmured Lawrence. I didn't know he existed until today. I understand, said Margaret, but her tone indicated she understood more than Lawrence was revealing. Would you like to see our home? As Margaret led the tour of the shelter, Lawrence grew more and more impressed. The place was simple, but there was love in every detail. Children's drawings on the walls, a reading nook with organized books, a vegetable garden in the backyard where the boys learned to plant. How many children live here? Asked Lawrence. 12 at the moment, ages between 6 and 17. Some are temporary, others have nowhere else to go. And how do you get by? Donations, some charity events. I work part-time at a public school. It's not easy, but we make do. Lawrence observed the place with a professional eye. He noticed the roof had a few leaks. The exterior paint needed touching up. There were only 2 bathrooms for all those children. Even so, everything was clean and organized. Where's Justin? Asked Ethan suddenly. Lawrence realized Tyler was using a fake name, as Ethan had explained. He's in the room reading, replied Margaret. He's been spending a lot of time alone lately. Can I go there? Asked Ethan. Of course, dear. Your uncle can come too if he wants to see where you sleep. Lawrence felt his heart race. In a few minutes he would see Tyler for the first time in 3 months. How would his son react? Had Ethan told him about this meeting? The room was small but cozy, with 4 bunk beds that accommodated 8 boys. Tyler was on the top bunk of one bed, reading a thick book. When he heard the footsteps, he looked up and froze upon seeing Lawrence. What is he doing here? Asked Tyler, his voice laden with anger. I brought him to see where I live, Ethan replied calmly. Tyler jumped down from the bunk, slamming the book shut. You told him? I did. He had a right to know. Lawrence observed his son with a mixture of relief and pain. Tyler was thinner, his hair longer, but he looked healthy. He wore simple, clean clothes, and there was something different in his eyes, a maturity that hadn't been there 3 months ago. Tyler, Lawrence began. My name here is Justin, the young man cut in, and I have nothing to say to you. I just want to talk, that's all. Talk? Tyler laughed bitterly. Now you want to talk? After 17 years of ordering everyone around, now you want to talk? Lawrence felt tears welling in his eyes. The anger in his son's gaze was like a blade through his chest. I know I made mistakes. Mistakes? Tyler became agitated. Abandoning your own son is a mistake. Ignoring Ethan's mother's letters is a mistake. Spending years watching him beg for change in front of you and pretending he doesn't exist is a mistake. Other boys began to appear at the bedroom door, drawn by the argument. Lawrence noticed they all seemed protective of Tyler, as if he were part of the family. "Tyler, please. Why don't you ask Ethan what his life was like? Why don't you ask where he slept before he came here? Why don't you ask how many times he went to bed hungry while you were dining at fancy restaurants?" Each question was a stab. Lawrence looked at Ethan, who remained silent, watching the interaction between father and son with sadness. "Ethan," Lawrence turned to the boy, "tell me. I want to know everything." "You don't need to tell him anything," said Tyler. "He doesn't really care. He just wants to clear his conscience." "Justin," Margaret appeared at the door, drawn by the noise. "Is everything all right here?" "Everything's fine, Mrs. Margaret." "Just a family chat," Tyler replied with irony. Margaret looked at Lawrence with an indecipherable expression, then at Ethan. "Ethan, dear, why don't you show your uncle the garden? I think you all could use some fresh air." The suggestion was clearly a request to lower the tension. Ethan motioned for Lawrence to follow him, and they went out to the backyard. Tyler stayed behind, but Lawrence noticed him watching them through the window. "He's really angry with me," Lawrence commented. "He's angry, but he's also confused," Ethan replied, sitting on a small low wall near the vegetable garden. "You know why?" "Why?" "Because he still loves you, and that makes him even angrier." Lawrence sat down next to his nephew, looking at the carefully organized plants. "How do you know that?" "Because when he read my mother's letters, he cried. Not from anger, from sadness. He was sad because he realized the father he thought he knew didn't exist." "What father did he think he knew?" "A strict but fair father. A father who always talked about doing what's right, about protecting the weaker, about being a good citizen. Then he discovered that same father abandoned a pregnant woman and left a child on the street." Lawrence swallowed hard. Ethan's analysis was more perceptive than any psychological report. "And now? What do I do?" "First, you need to understand one thing. Tyler didn't run away from home because he wanted to rebel or because he was bored. He ran away because he couldn't look at you anymore and pretend he didn't know who you really were. But I can change. I can be better. You can. But you have to prove it. And it won't be easy. What do you want me to do?" Ethan looked at Lawrence with a seriousness that didn't match his age. "You really want to know?" Lawrence nodded. "Stay here a week. Live like we live, eat what we eat, sleep where we sleep. Then Tyler will see if you've really changed or if you're just pretending." The proposal was absurd. Lawrence Harrison, who slept on Egyptian linen sheets and dined at five-star restaurants, living in a shelter bed. "My wife. My job. I have responsibilities." "You do, and one of them is to me, and another is to Tyler." Lawrence fell silent, weighing the options. Susan would be hysterical. Catherine, his wife, wouldn't understand. His colleagues at the court would think he'd lost his mind. "If I do this, will Tyler forgive me?" "I don't know, but at least he'll know you're really trying." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out, now continuing. Margaret approached them, carrying a tray with juice and homemade cookies. "I brought a snack. I thought you could use it." Lawrence accepted the glass of juice, surprised by the homemade, delicious taste. It had been years since he'd drunk something made at home. "Mrs. Margaret," Ethan said, "Uncle Lawrence wants to stay here a few days." Margaret almost dropped the tray. "Stay? What do you mean?" "To get to know me better, to understand how I live," Lawrence explained, surprising himself with the decision. "Lawrence, are you sure? This isn't exactly a place for people like you." "People like me?" Lawrence asked, genuinely curious. Margaret hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. "People used to other living conditions." Lawrence understood that Margaret had noticed he wasn't a common relative of Ethan's. Perhaps his way of speaking, his well-kept hands, some detail that gave away his social background. "I want to stay, if you'll have me." Margaret looked at Ethan, who nodded encouragingly. "Well, we always have room for those who want to help, but here everyone works. We don't have guests, only family. I want to work, just tell me what to do." First, let's talk to Justin. If he doesn't want you to stay, you can't stay. That's our rule. Any child can veto an adult's presence. Lawrence felt a chill in his stomach. What if Tyler said no? What if his own son didn't want him to stay? I'll talk to him, said Ethan, getting up from the low wall. No, interrupted Lawrence. I want to talk to him myself. Margaret and Ethan exchanged worried looks, but didn't interfere as Lawrence walked back into the house. Tyler was in the same spot, watching out the window. When he saw Lawrence approaching, his face closed off. I came to ask for your permission, said Lawrence as soon as he entered the room. Permission for what? To stay here for a week, to try to understand who you've become, to try to understand who Ethan is, to try to understand who I should have been. Tyler laughed, but there was no humor in it. You want to come do poverty tourism? Want to see how the poor little people live so you can go back to your little world and tell your friends? No. I want to try to be the father you deserve, and the Uncle Ethan deserves. It's too late to be my father. Maybe, but it's not too late to try to be a better man. Tyler stared at Lawrence for a long moment. There was something different in his father's gaze, a vulnerability he had never seen before. If I let you stay, there are rules. What are they? You're not a judge in here, you're just Lawrence. No ordering anyone around, no giving commands, no thinking you know more than everyone else. I accept. You'll sleep on the floor mattress, like any new person who arrives here. You'll eat the same food as everyone else, you'll do the same chores. I accept. And you won't talk about your life out there. I don't want to know about your money, your big house, your expensive car. Here you're just one more. Lawrence nodded, knowing that would be the hardest part. His identity was so tied to his status that he barely knew who he was without it. Last rule, said Tyler, his voice more serious. If you quit in the middle, if you leave before the week is over, I never want to see you in front of me again. Never again. And if I stay the whole week? Then we'll talk about what comes next. Lawrence extended his hand to Tyler, who hesitated before shaking it. I accept all your conditions. Then welcome to the New Hope shelter, Lawrence. For the first time in 3 months, Tyler had called Lawrence by his name instead of you. It was a small start, but it was a start. The first few hours at the shelter were a culture shock for Lawrence. Margaret showed him where his room was, a thin mattress on the living room floor with a simple sheet and a small pillow. His only possessions were the clothes borrowed from Ethan and a small towel Margaret had given him. Dinner is at 6, Margaret explained. Everyone helps prepare and everyone helps clean up. At 9, all the children have to be in their rooms. At 10, lights out. Lawrence, who was used to dinners at 8:30 and sleeping after midnight, simply nodded. And tomorrow? Tomorrow you'll learn our routine. The children have classes in the morning with the volunteer teacher, Mrs. Dorothy. In the afternoon, free time and activities. In the evening, guided study. And what do I do? You help. In the kitchen, with cleaning, in the garden, wherever needed. Everyone contributes here. Dinner time was particularly hard. Lawrence found himself sitting on the floor with the shelter's 12 children, sharing a simple meal of stew, bread, and greens. The food was tasty, but it was very different from the sophisticated dishes he was used to. The children watched him with poorly disguised curiosity. It was obvious they didn't believe the story that he was just a relative of Ethan's. His well-kept hands, his posture, his way of speaking gave away a different origin. Uncle Lawrence, asked a little girl named Lily, where did you live before? Lawrence looked at Ethan, who gave a discreet signal for him to lie. In a place very different from here, he answered vaguely. Why did you never visit Ethan before? Insisted the girl. Lily, interrupted Margaret, let Lawrence eat in peace. He just arrived. But Lawrence noticed that the girl's question echoed everyone's thoughts there. How can an uncle simply ignore a nephew's existence for years? After dinner, Lawrence helped with washing the dishes along with 3 of the older boys. His hands, accustomed only to holding papers and pens, struggled with the sponges and detergent. You've never washed dishes before? Asked one of the boys, laughing. Not much, admitted Lawrence. Wow, your family really is rich then, commented another. Tyler, who was drying the plates, shot a warning look at Lawrence. The lie about his background was becoming unsustainable. The night was the worst part. Lawrence lay on the thin mattress, trying to get used to the noises of the house. Children shifting in their rooms, someone coughing, the street noise coming in through the windows without thick curtains. He was used to the absolute silence of his home in Scarsdale. Around 2 in the morning, he heard footsteps in the living room. He opened his eyes and saw Ethan approaching. "Can't sleep," whispered the boy. "Haven't gotten used to it yet," admitted Lawrence. Ethan sat on the floor beside the mattress. "Want me to tell you what it was like before I came here?" Lawrence nodded, grateful for the company. "I slept in a cardboard box behind the market. In the winter, when it rained, I'd stay under the gas station awning. Had to share the space with other boys, and they weren't always nice to me." Lawrence felt a tightness in his chest, imagining his 10-year-old nephew sleeping on the street. "How did you eat?" "I begged for money during the day, looked for food in the trash at night. Sometimes a kind person would buy me a snack, but most of the time people pretended I didn't exist." "Like I did." "Like you did," confirmed Ethan without bitterness. "But you're here now, that counts for something." "Does it?" "It means maybe Tyler is right. Maybe you can change." On the second day, Lawrence met Mrs. Dorothy, the volunteer teacher who gave lessons to the children. She was a lady of about 60, retired, who dedicated her mornings to the shelter. "So you're Ethan's famous uncle," said Dorothy with a smile that didn't hide her suspicion. "Famous?" "Ethan talked a lot about you yesterday. Said you showed up out of nowhere after years." Lawrence realized his story was generating comments. It was natural for people to be suspicious. "It's a complicated situation," he murmured. "I imagine. Usually when a rich relative shows up suddenly, it's because they want something." Dorothy's observation was direct and on point. Lawrence wondered if everyone there had noticed his social status. "I don't want anything. I just want to get to know Ethan better. Then you'll be glad to know he's one of the smartest boys I've ever met. He taught himself to read, is good with math, and has an impressive memory." Lawrence swelled with pride for his nephew, but also felt guilt. If Ethan was so smart, how much potential had been wasted by years of neglect? Has he ever thought about studying seriously, taking a prep course for high school? Dorothy laughed. "Lawrence, you still don't understand where you are. This isn't a place for prep courses, this is a place for survival." "But he could what? Leave here and go where? Take a course with what money? Live where while he studies?" Lawrence fell silent, realizing how his perspective was disconnected from the reality of those children. "I'm sorry. I'm still learning." "You certainly are. And you better learn fast, because these kids have a sharp detector for adults who are just pretending to care." During the morning class, Lawrence watched Ethan interact with the other children. The boy was clearly respected by his peers, and there was a natural leadership in him that was impressive. When a younger child struggled with an exercise, Ethan promptly offered help. Tyler also participated in the classes, and Lawrence noticed that his son had developed a patience with the younger children that he had never shown before. The young man, who was always competitive and individualistic at home, now generously shared his knowledge. In the afternoon, Lawrence was assigned to help in the garden with Margaret. It was work that required kneeling in the dirt with dirty hands under the strong sun. "Never worked with plants?" asked Margaret, seeing Lawrence struggle with a simple tomato seedling. "My wife has a planter, but—" Lawrence stopped himself, remembering Tyler's rule about not talking about his previous life. "But what? But I never got involved with it. Does your wife know you're here?" The question caught Lawrence off guard. Catherine thought he was on a work trip to Washington, D.C. Susan had made up an excuse about a judicial refresher course. "She knows I'm resolving a family matter." "What matter?" Lawrence hesitated. Margaret seemed genuinely interested, and there was a wisdom in her eyes that invited honesty. "I'm trying to get my son back." "Ethan?" "No, another son, who ran away from home and is here." Margaret stopped planting and looked directly at Lawrence. "Justin, how do you know?" "Lawrence, I've been caring for children for 15 years. I can recognize a father looking for a son. and I can recognize a son running from a father. Did he tell you anything? Justin doesn't tell anyone anything, but he cries at night. And in the morning, when he thinks no one is looking, he looks at a photo of a family he keeps under his pillow. Lawrence felt his chest tighten. Tyler kept a family photo and cried at night. What photo? A photo of you three. You, him, and a blonde woman. It seems to be from some birthday or party. Lawrence immediately remembered the photo. It was from Tyler's last birthday, 8 months ago. They were smiling, they looked like a happy family. How had things deteriorated so much in so little time? Margaret, do you think he can forgive me? I don't think that's the question. The question is, have you really changed? I'm trying. Trying isn't enough. These kids have been abandoned many times. They don't believe in promises, they only believe in actions. What actions? That you need to figure out on your own. But I can give you a hint. Stop thinking like a father and start thinking like a friend. How so? As a father, you always thought you had the right to decide what was best for Tyler. As a friend, you need to listen to what he thinks is best for him. On the third day, an unexpected situation tested Lawrence's stay at the shelter. During the early hours, a strong storm began and quickly turned into a torrential downpour that revealed all the structural problems of the place. Lawrence woke up with drops of cold water falling on his face. The roof was leaking in several spots, and the children were running with buckets and pots to catch the water. "Everyone to the cafeteria," shouted Margaret. "It's the driest place." Lawrence found himself helping to carry mattresses and blankets to the cafeteria, where all the children would spend the rest of the night huddled together. There was no heating, the humidity was high, and the discomfort was general. But what impressed Lawrence the most was how the children handled the situation. There were no complaints, dramatizations, or requests to call their parents. They simply adapted, sharing blankets, telling stories to distract the younger ones, and turning a difficult situation into a kind of adventure. "Is it always like this when it rains hard?" asked Lawrence to Ethan. "Always. Mrs. Margaret has asked for help to fix the roof many times, but there's never any money." Lawrence immediately thought of offering money for the repairs, but he remembered Tyler's rules. He couldn't use his wealth as an easy solution. "And you always manage on your own?" "We learn to manage. When there's no solution, crying doesn't help." Ethan's simple philosophy contrasted painfully with the upbringing Lawrence had given Tyler, where every problem had a bought solution. During the improvised night in the cafeteria, Lawrence watched Tyler caring for the younger children. His son had become a kind of older brother to everyone there, helping with fears, drying tears, inventing games to pass the time. Lily, the little girl who had questioned Lawrence on the first day, ended up sleeping, leaning against him. It was a simple, innocent trust that deeply touched the judge. It had been years since he had such direct and genuine contact with children. "She's adopted you," whispered Tyler, approaching. "How so?" "Lily lost her father when she was 4. Since then, she latches onto any male figure who shows up here. But usually those people leave." The sentence carried a clear weight. Lawrence could not disappoint another child. "I'm not leaving," murmured Lawrence. "We'll see," replied Tyler, but there was less hostility in his voice. On the 4th day, Lawrence got to know Mrs. Dorothy more deeply when she invited him to help with the lessons. The experience of trying to explain basic math to children who had learned to count quarters to survive was humbling and revealing. "Have you ever been a teacher?" asked Dorothy during the break. "No, I work with laws." "A lawyer?" "Something like that." Dorothy smiled in a way that indicated she knew Lawrence was omitting information. "Do you know what the problem is with people like you? People like me. People who work with theories. You think you know how the world works, but you've never really seen it." "How so?" "You spend all day dealing with rules about how people should live, but you've never seen how they actually live." Dorothy's observation was like a slap in the face. Lawrence realized he had spent decades judging cases and people without ever truly understanding the circumstances that led someone to break the law. "Mrs. Dorothy, may I ask a question?" "Of course." "How can someone like Ethan How can a smart child like him have a future here? Dorothy sighed deeply before answering. Lawrence, that's the question that keeps me awake at night. Ethan is brilliant. With opportunities, he could be anything. A doctor, an engineer, a lawyer. Then why doesn't he have those opportunities? Because the world doesn't work that way. Ethan doesn't have organized documents, no formal school history, no structured family to support his studies. He has intelligence, but that's not enough. But there must be some way. There is. If someone takes responsibility for him, if someone pays for his studies, his housing, his basic needs for years, if someone is willing to be a real family. Lawrence understood the hint. Dorothy was suggesting he take responsibility for Ethan. And if someone did that, then Ethan would have a real chance. But it has to be someone who won't give up halfway. These children have been abandoned too many times. On the 5th day, something happened that completely changed the shelter's dynamic. Catherine, Lawrence's wife, appeared. Lawrence was helping in the kitchen when he heard Margaret answer the doorbell. Right after, he heard a familiar voice asking for him. "Is Lawrence Harrison here?" said Catherine in her polite but firm voice. Lawrence froze. How had Catherine discovered where he was? And more importantly, how to explain his presence there? "May I ask who wants to speak with him?" Margaret replied diplomatically. "I am his wife, Catherine Harrison." Lawrence left the kitchen with his heart racing. Catherine was at the door, elegant as always, completely out of place in that environment. She wore a business dress, high heels, a designer handbag, and carried the keys to the luxury sedan. "Catherine, what are you doing here?" "Looking for my husband," she replied, looking around with a mixture of surprise and disapproval. "Lawrence, what is this place? It's complicated to explain." "Try." Tyler appeared in the room, drawn by the voices. When he saw Catherine, his face completely closed off. "Mother." "Tyler!" Catherine rushed to hug her son, but he stepped back. "How did you find us?" "Susan told me where your father was. Lawrence, can you explain to me what this game is?" Lawrence looked around. All the children from the shelter were watching the scene, including Ethan, who looked especially tense. "Catherine, could we talk in private?" "No," Tyler interrupted. "If they're really family, let them stay here. Let them see where I live now." "Tyler, you come home right now," ordered Catherine with her mother's voice, accustomed to being obeyed. "I'm not going." "What do you mean you're not going? You're 17. You're a minor." "And Ethan is 10 and has been alone in the world for 5 years. Where was this concern for minors?" Catherine looked at Ethan as if seeing him for the first time. "Who is Ethan?" Lawrence took a deep breath. It was time to tell the truth. "Ethan is my nephew, my son." The silence that followed was deafening. Catherine looked at Lawrence, then at Ethan, then at Tyler, trying to process the information. "You're what?" "My son, with Sarah Miller, before I married you." "Lawrence, what kind of story is this?" "A story I should have told a long time ago. Ethan is my son, whom I abandoned 10 years ago." Catherine sat down heavily in a chair, the shock evident on her face. "You have another son?" It's complicated." "Complicated?" Catherine stood up, indignant. "You abandoned a child and found it too complicated to tell me?" "Catherine, please, please, nothing." She turned to Tyler. "Is this why you ran away, because of this?" "I ran away because I found out who my father really is, and who he always hid from us." Catherine looked again at Ethan, who remained silent, but watched everything attentively. "How old are you, dear?" she asked in a softer voice. 10, ma'am." "And where is your mother?" "She's gone, when I was 5. "Gone how?" "Where to?" Lawrence quickly intervened. "Catherine, perhaps it's better we discuss this at home." "At home?" Tyler laughed bitterly. "Which home? The home where we lived a lie? The home where you pretended to be a perfect family while Dad's abandoned son lived on the street?" "Tyler, lower your voice," Catherine requested automatically. "I won't lower anything. You want to know the truth?" Ethan slept in a cardboard box behind the market, ate garbage, begged for quarters at the door of the courthouse where Dad has worked for years, and he pretended he didn't exist. Each word was a stab at Lawrence and Catherine. The other children from the shelter watched the argument in silence, accustomed to family dramas, but not this level of tension. "Ethan," Catherine addressed the boy directly, "are you really Lawrence's son?" "Yes, Mum, yes. My mother kept a photo of him, and I have his last name on my birth certificate." "You have a birth certificate?" "Yes. My mother left all the documents with me before she left." Catherine looked at Lawrence with a mixture of pain and anger he had never seen before. 22 years of marriage, Lawrence. 22 years, and you never thought you should tell me you had another son." "I was afraid." "Afraid of what? That I wouldn't accept it? That I would judge you?" "Afraid of losing you, of losing our family." "Our family?" Catherine laughed humorlessly. "Our family was a sham. While I was taking care of Tyler, thinking we were a complete family, you knew you had another son abandoned on the street." Margaret, who had been quietly observing everything, decided to intervene. "Perhaps it's best to continue this conversation in a more private place. The children don't need to be part of this." "No," said Tyler firmly. "If they want to take me away, let it be in front of everyone. Let everyone see what kind of family I have." "Tyler," began Lawrence, "you want to know something, Dad? During these 2 months here, I've learned what a real family is. Family isn't having the same blood or living in the same big house. Family is taking care of each other. It's not abandoning anyone, it's sharing even the little you have." "We are your family," protested Catherine. "You are my biological parents. But family is this right here." Tyler gestured to the children around him. "It's Mrs. Margaret who works from morning to night to take care of everyone. It's Ethan who shares the last piece of bread with someone who's hungry. It's Lily who hugs anyone who's sad." Lawrence looked around and for the first time truly saw what Tyler was trying to show him. There was a genuine solidarity among the children at the shelter that he didn't recognize in his own family. "What if we changed?" Catherine asked suddenly. "What if we took Ethan in? What if we tried to be a real family?" The question took everyone by surprise. Tyler looked at his mother with an expression of surprise and hope that Lawrence hadn't seen in months. "You would do that?" asked Tyler. "I don't know. I need to process all of this, but if Ethan is your father's son, then he is your brother. And if he's your brother, then he's my responsibility too." Ethan, who had remained silent throughout the discussion, finally spoke. "I don't want to be anyone's obligation. I'd rather stay here." "Ethan," began Lawrence. "No, Uncle Lawrence. You and Aunt are offering to take me in because you found out I exist. But if I were just any street kid, you wouldn't even be here." Ethan's observation was devastatingly accurate. Lawrence realized that indeed, if Tyler hadn't run away and revealed his brother's existence, he would probably have continued ignoring the boy indefinitely. "You're right," admitted Lawrence. "But now that I know who you are, I want to do what's right." "Do what's right?" Ethan laughed sadly. "Uncle Lawrence, doing what's right was looking for me 5 years ago when my mother passed. Doing what's right was answering the letters she sent. Now it's too late." "It's never too late," said Catherine softly. "Ethan, I know I'm to blame for this too. Lawrence should have told me about you, and I should have realized something was wrong. But maybe we can start over." "How?" "I don't know yet, but we can try." Margaret, who was watching everything with the wisdom of someone who had mediated many complicated family situations, decided to intervene again. "May I suggest something?" Everyone turned to her. "Why don't you continue this conversation at home? But not to decide where Ethan will live or what will happen to Tyler. Just to talk, to tell truths that should have been told a long time ago." "What if they try to force me to go back?" asked Tyler. "They won't," Margaret replied firmly, "because they know that if they do, they'll lose you forever." Lawrence looked at Catherine, then at Tyler, then at Ethan. His family had expanded in a painful and complicated way, but perhaps there was still hope. "Ethan, would you come to the house for dinner, just dinner? Then you can come back here." "What about Tyler?" "Tyler decides what he wants to do." Tyler looked at Ethan, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. "Okay, but I'm not sleeping there." "For now," agreed Lawrence. "For now," repeated Tyler. The drive back to Scarsdale was tense and silent. Catherine drove the luxury sedan, while Lawrence sat in the passenger seat, Tyler and Ethan in the back. The difference between the two worlds became more evident with every mile. Ethan stared out the window with wide eyes as they entered increasingly wealthy neighborhoods. Huge houses, manicured lawns, luxury cars, electronic gates. It was a world completely different from everything he knew. "Is this where you live?" he asked when they stopped in front of the Harrisons' gate. "Yes," replied Tyler, watching his brother's reaction. The house was truly impressive. 3 stories, a pool, a large garden, a 3-car garage. Ethan got out of the luxury sedan in silence, clearly intimidated. "It's very big," he commented simply. "Come in," said Catherine, her voice laden with emotions she was still processing. Inside the house, the contrast was even more evident. Expensive furniture, artwork on the walls, Persian rugs, a decor that screamed wealth and status. Ethan moved carefully, as if afraid of breaking something. "Would you like something to drink?" offered Catherine. "Water, please." Catherine brought a crystal glass with ice water. Ethan drank slowly, observing everything around him. "Uncle Lawrence, have you always lived like this?" "Not always. We managed to build this over the years. And my mother. Did she know you lived like this?" The question was simple but loaded with meaning. Lawrence realized Ethan was trying to understand why he had been abandoned while so much wealth existed. "Your mother, Sarah, knew a different version of me. When we were young, I didn't have any of this. But after you got all this, didn't you ever think of looking for her?" Lawrence sat down heavily on the leather sofa. "I thought about it many times, but I always found an excuse to do nothing." "What excuses? Fear, shame, selfishness?" Ethan nodded, as if he had expected that answer. Tyler, who had been silent, finally spoke. "Ethan, want to see my room?" Lawrence realized Tyler was trying to show his brother the differences in their lives. Tyler's room took up an entire floor of the house. It had a large-screen TV, a video game console, a state-of-the-art computer, a king-size bed, a closet full of designer clothes. Ethan looked at everything in silence, touching nothing. "Is all this yours?" he finally asked. "Yes, it was. I don't know anymore." "Why don't you know anymore?" "Because now I know you exist, and I know that while I had all this, you had nothing. But that's not your fault. It's not. But it's not fair either." Ethan sat on the edge of the bed, lost in thought. "Tyler, can I ask you a question?" "Of course. Do you hate me?" The question took Tyler by surprise. "Hate you? Why would I hate you?" "Because I ruined everything. If I didn't exist, you'd still be a happy family." Tyler sat down on the bed next to his brother. "Ethan, you didn't ruin anything. Our father ruined everything when he abandoned you. I just found out later. But now your mom is mad at your dad because of me. My mom is mad because she found out she was lied to for 20 years. That's not your fault." Downstairs, Lawrence and Catherine were having their first honest conversation in decades. "How could you hide this from me?" Catherine asked, the tears finally coming. "Catherine, No, let me speak first. 22 years, Lawrence. 22 years of marriage, and you never trusted me enough to tell me you had another son." "I did trust you." "Trusted? If you trusted me, you would have told me. Do you know what this means? It means our entire life was a lie." Lawrence had no answer for that, because he knew she was right. "And now?" asked Catherine. "What do we do now?" "I don't know. Can you forgive me?" "Lawrence, the problem isn't just forgiving you. The problem is I need to decide if I can live with who you really are. Who I really am. A man capable of abandoning a son and lying about it for 10 years. A man capable of spending years seeing that same son on the street and pretending he doesn't exist." Catherine's words were harsh, but true. Lawrence was being forced to face the reality of his choices. "But I can change. I am changing. Maybe. But that doesn't erase what you did. And it doesn't guarantee you won't do it again." "What do you mean?" "Lawrence, you abandoned Ethan once. What guarantee does he have that you won't abandon him again when all this gets too complicated?" The question echoed in Lawrence's mind. Indeed, what guarantees could he offer? "And Tyler," asked Catherine, "how will he ever trust you after this? He said he'll give me a chance if I stay a week at the shelter." "And you're going to stay?" "I am. I've already been there 5 days. Lawrence, you understand this is more than a week at a shelter. This is about completely rebuilding who you are as a father and as a man." Lawrence nodded, knowing she was right. When the boys came down for dinner, the atmosphere was heavy with unresolved emotions. Catherine had prepared a special meal, an obvious effort to impress Ethan, but the dinner was tense and formal. "Ethan," said Catherine during dessert, "tell me about your mother." Ethan hesitated, looking at Lawrence before answering. "She was a nurse, worked a lot, always trying to get money so we could have a better life. She said I was just like my father, that I had the same stubbornness." "She talked about Lawrence?" "She did. Said he was a good man, just too young and too scared. She always said one day he would grow up and come looking for us." Catherine looked at Lawrence with an expression that mixed pain and disappointment. "And when she passed?" "She got a heart condition. The doctors said it was too much work, too much stress. She couldn't take it." Lawrence closed his eyes, feeling the weight of guilt. If he had taken responsibility for Ethan, Sarah might not have had to work so hard, might not have gotten so stressed, might still be alive. "What happened after?" asked Catherine gently. "I stayed with a neighbor for a few months, but she couldn't support me. Then I went to the streets." "At 5 years old?" "At 5 years old." The silence that followed was deafening. Catherine looked at Ethan with eyes full of tears, imagining a 5-year-old child alone in the world. "Ethan," she said finally, "would you like to live here?" The question took everyone by surprise, including Lawrence. "Catherine," Lawrence began. "Let him answer," she interrupted. Ethan looked at Tyler, then at Lawrence, finally at Catherine. "Why do you want me to live here?" "Because you are Lawrence's son, and that makes you family." "But you don't even know me." "No, but I want to. And I want you to have the opportunities you should have had all along." "What if I can't get used to it? What if you all realize it's too hard having me here?" Catherine stood up and went to Ethan, kneeling beside his chair. "Ethan, I won't lie to you. This will be hard for everyone. There will be arguments, there will be difficult moments, there will be adjustments. But one thing I promise, no one will abandon you again." "How can you promise that?" "Because now you are no longer a secret. Tyler knows you exist. I know you exist. If Lawrence tries to abandon you again, we won't let him." Tyler, who had been watching everything, finally spoke. "Ethan, if you come live here, I'll come back too." "What do you mean?" "I'll only come home if you come with me. We're brothers. From now on, we're either together or we're apart, but I won't leave you alone again." Ethan looked at the 3 people around the table, his biological father who had abandoned him, the stepmother he had just met, and the brother he had discovered 2 months ago. For the first time in 5 years, someone was offering him a family. What about the shelter? And Mrs. Margaret? And the other kids? "You can visit whenever you want," promised Catherine. "And maybe we can help the shelter in other ways." "How?" Lawrence, who had remained silent for most of the conversation, finally spoke. "We can fix the roof, repair the leaks, buy materials for the classes. There are many ways to help. You would do that?" "I would. For you, for Tyler. And because it's the right thing to do." Ethan was silent for a long moment, processing everything. "Can I think about it?" "Of course," said Catherine. "How much time do you need?" "Can I answer tomorrow?" "You can answer when you're ready," assured Tyler. When they returned to the shelter that night, Lawrence found himself in a surreal situation. He, who was supposed to be completing his 6th night sleeping on the floor mattress, was going home with his wife and possibly with 2 sons. But Tyler was firm. He would sleep at the shelter one more night, and Ethan too. "Are you sure?" asked Catherine. "I am," replied Tyler. "I want to sleep here one last time, to say a proper goodbye. And I want to stay here until I decide what I'm going to do," added Ethan. Lawrence and Catherine returned home alone, leaving the two brothers at the shelter. On the way, they talked more honestly than they had in years. "Lawrence, if Ethan comes to live with us, everything will change." "I know. It's not just a question of space or money. It's a question of relearning how to be a family. Do you think we can do it?" "I don't know, but I think we need to try." "And you, can you forgive me?" Catherine was silent for a long moment before answering. "Lawrence, forgiveness is a process. Right now I'm angry, hurt, disappointed, but I also see that you're trying to do what's right. Maybe that's a start." "A start is more than I deserved." "It is. But Ethan and Tyler deserve a family that works, and if that's what they want, then we'll have to learn how to work." The next morning, Lawrence woke up early and went to the shelter alone. He wanted to keep his 1-week promise, even if the last 2 days had been atypical. He found Tyler helping in the kitchen and Ethan playing with the younger children in the garden. "Hi, Dad," said Tyler when Lawrence entered the kitchen. It was the first time in months that Tyler had called him Dad without irony or anger. "Hi, son, did you sleep well?" "I did. Did you come to get us?" "I came to keep my promise. 1 week, 1 day left." Tyler smiled. "You don't need to anymore. You've already proven what you had to prove." "What did I prove?" "That you're capable of leaving your comfort zone when it really matters. That you're capable of change." Lawrence felt enormous relief, but also an unexpected sadness. There was something about the shelter he didn't want to leave behind. "Tyler, I learned a lot here." "What did you learn?" "I learned what a real family is. I learned that wealth isn't about money. I learned that I wasted years being the wrong kind of father, and now I want to try to be the right kind for you and for Ethan. Dad, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you regret having Ethan?" The question caught Lawrence off guard. "What do you mean?" "If you could go back in time, would you have prevented my mother from existing? Would you have prevented Ethan from being born?" Lawrence thought carefully before answering. "No. I regret having abandoned him. But I don't regret that he exists. Ethan is a gift I didn't know how to receive at the right time." "So you really want him to come live with us?" "I do." "And you?" "Dad, I've wanted Ethan as a brother since the day I found out he existed. The question is whether the two of you can be real fathers to him." "We can. We'll learn. He deserves parents who won't give up when things get tough." "We won't give up." Tyler studied his father's face for a long moment. "Okay, I'll take your word for it. But if you hurt him, I'll never forgive you." "Understood." They went to find Ethan in the garden where he was teaching Lily to read. "Ethan," called Tyler, "I need to talk to you." Ethan stood up and went to the two of them, clearly nervous. "Have you decided something?" asked Lawrence. "I have," replied Ethan, taking a deep breath. "I want to go live with you." Lawrence felt his heart race with happiness. "Are you sure?" "I am, but with a few conditions." "What are they?" "First, I want to keep coming here every weekend to help the younger kids." "Agreed," said Lawrence immediately. "Second, I want to study for real. I want to make up for the years I lost, and I want to go to college." "Agreed." "Third, I don't want to be treated like a poor thing. I want to have responsibilities at home. I want to help. I want to be part of the family for real." "Agreed." "And fourth, if you separate because of me, I come back here." "Ethan," began Lawrence. "No, Uncle Lawrence. I know my existence caused problems between you. If those problems are too big, I don't want to be the reason you destroy your marriage." Tyler knelt beside his brother. "Ethan, our parents won't separate because of you. If they separate, it will be because they couldn't deal with the lies from the past, but that has nothing to do with you." "How do you know?" "Because I talked with Mom last night, and she made it very clear that she wants you in the family, no matter what happens between her and Dad." Lawrence knelt too, coming down to the level of the two boys. "Ethan, Tyler is right. You are not a problem to be solved. You are my son, and I want to have you with me, because that's where you should have been all along." And what if I can't adapt? What if I can't get used to the big house, the different rules, your life? Then we'll change the rules, Lawrence replied simply. We'll adapt our life for you too, not just you for our life. Ethan looked at Tyler, who nodded encouragingly. Okay, let's try. Lawrence hugged both his sons for the first time in his life, feeling a completeness he had never experienced before. When do you want to go home? He asked. This afternoon, replied Tyler. I want to help with the Saturday morning cleaning here, and I want to say a proper goodbye to everyone. And I want to talk to Mrs. Margaret, added Ethan. I want to thank her for everything she did for me. The farewell at the shelter was emotional for everyone. The children gathered to say goodbye to Tyler and Ethan, though Ethan had promised to return every weekend. Margaret hugged Lawrence for a long time. Take good care of him, she whispered. I will. And take good care of Tyler, too. He changed a lot here. He discovered who he really is. What did he discover? That he has a generous heart. That he likes to take care of others. That he is much more than just the important judge's son. Lawrence looked at Tyler, who was saying goodbye to the younger children with a tenderness he had rarely seen in his son. Margaret, can I ask you a question? Of course. How did you get Tyler to open up so quickly? I didn't get anything. I just gave him the opportunity to be who he really was, without pressures, without expectations, without judgments. And how do I do that at home? Stop trying to mold your children to be who you think they should be. Let them be who they are. The lesson was simple, but Lawrence knew it would be hard to apply after years of doing the opposite. When they arrived home, Catherine was waiting for them with the guest room completely reorganized for Ethan. She had bought clothes, school supplies, toys appropriate for his age. Do you like it? She asked anxiously. Ethan looked around the room, much smaller than Tyler's, but still bigger than any place he had ever slept. It's very nice, Aunt Catherine, thank you. You can change whatever you want, choose other colors, other furniture. It's perfect like this. That night during dinner, Lawrence made an announcement. I have a proposal for all of us. What proposal? Asked Tyler. Let's start from scratch, all of us, without pretending the past didn't happen, but without letting it define who we are from now on. How so? Asked Ethan. How so we're going to relearn how to be a family. I'm going to relearn how to be a father. Catherine is going to learn how to be a mother of two. Tyler is going to learn how to be an older brother. And you are going to learn how to be part of a family. And if we mess up? We're going to mess up a lot, admitted Lawrence, but we're going to mess up trying to do what's right. Uncle Lawrence, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you still regret having abandoned me? Lawrence took a deep breath before answering. Ethan, I regret it every day, but regret doesn't change the past. What can change is the future, and I want our future to be different. How? I want you to have every opportunity I didn't give you before. I want you to study, to achieve your dreams, to become whoever you want to be. And if I want to be a social worker and work with abandoned kids like me? The question caught Lawrence by surprise, but he smiled. Then I'll be the proudest father in the world. Even if that's not a rich or important profession? Ethan, I learned something this week. Importance has nothing to do with money or status. It has to do with the impact you make on people's lives. And you want me to make a good impact? I want you to make the impact you think is right, and I'll support you in any choice you make. Tyler looked at his father with an expression of admiration that Lawrence hadn't seen in years. Dad, you really have changed. I'm trying. No, you've changed. The father I knew before would never say he'd support someone who wanted to be a social worker. Lawrence laughed. The father you knew before was a jerk. He was kind of a jerk, agreed Tyler, laughing too. Ethan watched the two of them laughing and felt something he hadn't felt in 5 years. Hope. In the months that followed, the Harrison family went through a profound transformation. Ethan adapted to his new life with an ease that surprised everyone, though he kept his weekend commitments at the shelter. Lawrence truly changed his approach as a father. Instead of imposing expectations, he began to discover who his sons really were. Tyler developed an interest in psychology and decided he wanted to work in family therapy. Ethan, as he had predicted, became interested in social work. Catherine proved to be a natural mother to Ethan, treating him not as an obligation, but as a son who should have always been there. She became actively involved in the shelter's life, organizing fundraising campaigns and charity events. The most significant change, however, was in Lawrence as a person. He began using his position as a judge to truly understand the circumstances of the people who appeared in his court. His rulings became more humane, more focused on rehabilitation than on punishment. 1 year later, during Ethan's birthday, his first family birthday party, Lawrence gave a speech that summed up the entire transformation. "Ethan, a year ago I was a different man, a man who thought he knew what was right and wrong, but who didn't know what real love was. You taught me that love isn't about giving expensive things or living in big houses. Love is about not giving up on people, even when it's hard. Thank you, Uncle Lawrence. But you don't have to thank me. I'm the one who should be thankful for having a family." "We all should be thankful," said Tyler. "Because before we were just people living in the same house. Now we're a real family." Catherine raised her glass of juice, a toast to our family. It took a while to form, but it arrived right on time. "To our family," everyone repeated. As they toasted, Lawrence looked around the table and saw something it had taken him 50 years to understand. A family isn't about perfection, it's about acceptance. It's not about never making mistakes, it's about always trying to do better. And for the first time in his life, Lawrence Harrison was truly home. 6 months later, the new Hope Shelter was unrecognizable. With the renovations funded by the Harrison family and other families who got involved in the project, the place had been transformed into a model of childcare. Lawrence was there on a Saturday afternoon, helping Ethan with tutoring for the children, when Margaret approached him. "Lawrence, I need to tell you something." "What is it?" "A new child arrived yesterday, an 8-year-old boy. His parents abandoned him at a train station." Lawrence felt a familiar pang in his chest. "How is he?" "Scared, angry. He won't talk to anyone." "Can I meet him?" "You can, but he doesn't trust adults, especially men." Lawrence found the boy sitting alone in the garden, staring into space with an expression he recognized. It was the same expression Ethan had when he arrived. "Hi," said Lawrence, sitting on the ground beside the child. "My name is Lawrence. What's yours?" The boy completely ignored him. "I understand you don't want to talk. I wouldn't either if I were you." The boy glanced sideways at Lawrence, clearly surprised by the approach. "You know, I have a son who lived here for a while. He was very angry, too." "Why was he angry?" asked the boy for the first time. "Because he found out I wasn't the father he thought I was. He found out I had done bad things." "What bad things?" "I abandoned my other son." "I ignored him for years." The boy looked at Lawrence with genuine interest. "And what did you do?" "I learned to be a better person. I learned that sometimes adults make big mistakes, but that doesn't mean they can't change." "My parents aren't going to change," said the boy sadly. "Maybe not, but that doesn't mean you'll be alone forever." "How do you know?" "Because I've met many children who thought they'd be alone forever, and all of them found families in the end." "Real families?" "Real families. Sometimes they're families you're born into, sometimes they're families you choose, sometimes they're families that choose you." The boy was silent for a moment. "That boy who was angry with you, did you become friends again?" "We did, more than friends. We're real father and son now." "And the other son you abandoned?" "He lives with me now, and he forgave me, even though I didn't deserve it." "Why did he forgive you?" Lawrence thought carefully before answering. "Because he understood that sometimes people do terrible things when they're scared, and because he saw I was really trying to be better." "Do your sons come here?" "They do, every weekend. Want to meet them?" The boy nodded timidly. When Ethan and Tyler arrived an hour later, they found Lawrence talking animatedly with the new boy. The two brothers naturally joined the conversation, and soon the boy was laughing at the stories they told about their own adaptation to family life. "How did you know it was going to work out as a family?" asked the boy. Ethan and Tyler exchanged glances. "We didn't know," admitted Ethan. "We just decided to try." "And if it hadn't worked out?" "Then we would have tried a different way," replied Tyler. The important thing is not to give up trying. And you never fight? We do fight, said Lawrence. Real families fight sometimes, but real families also forgive and keep trying. When they were leaving that afternoon, Ethan approached his father. Uncle Lawrence, did you see how that boy was looking at us? I did. Why? He looked like someone who wants to believe there is hope. And is there? There is. But only if people like us keep showing him that there is. Lawrence smiled, proud of the son he had found and the man he was becoming. Ethan, you're right. And you know what else? What? I think we have room for one more brother. Ethan looked at his father with shining eyes. Are you serious? I am. If you and Tyler agree, and if your mother Catherine is on board, maybe we can give that boy a chance. Tyler! Shouted Ethan. Did you hear that? Tyler came running back. Hear what? Dad wants to adopt the new boy. Tyler looked at Lawrence with an expression of surprise and admiration. Dad, are you sure? I am. Our family started when I finally did what was right with Ethan. Maybe it's time to keep doing what's right. What if Mom doesn't want to? Your mother has spent the last year organizing campaigns to help abandoned children. I think she'll want to. What if he doesn't want to come? Then we wait. And while we wait, we keep showing him that family is possible. That night during dinner, Lawrence presented the idea to Catherine. Are you sure we're ready for this? She asked. I'm not sure of anything, admitted Lawrence, but I'm sure it's worth trying. And you too? Catherine looked at Tyler and Ethan. What do you think? I think we can give him what someone gave me, replied Ethan. What was that? A second chance. And you, Tyler? Mom, I learned something this past year. The best part of having a family isn't what you get, it's what you can give. Catherine looked at the three men in her life and saw something that filled her with pride. They had become people who used their privileges to help others. All right, she said finally. Let's talk to him, but no pressure. If he wants to stay at the shelter, we respect that. Agreed, said Lawrence. 2 months later, the Harrison family had 4 members. The boy, whose name was Caleb, had accepted Lawrence's proposal after weeks of conversations and gradual visits. The adaptation wasn't easy. Caleb had been more traumatized by abandonment than Ethan, and it took time for him to truly trust that he wouldn't be abandoned again. But the experience of Lawrence, Catherine, Tyler, and Ethan with family changes had prepared them to have patience. On Caleb's first night in the house, Lawrence found him awake in his room, clearly scared. Can't sleep? Asked Lawrence softly. I'm afraid I'll wake up and find out it was a dream, whispered Caleb. It wasn't a dream. And even if you wake up and don't like being here, we won't send you away. We'll find a way to make it work. How do you know? Because I've done it before, with Ethan, and it worked. What if I can't be a good son? Lawrence sat on the edge of the bed. Caleb, you don't need to be a good son. You just need to be yourself. We're going to learn how to be a family together with you. What if I mess everything up? Then we fix it. That's what family is. Messing up and fixing until we get it right. Weren't your other kids mad that you brought someone else home? No. You know why? Why? Because they understood that love doesn't shrink when you share it. Love multiplies. Caleb looked at Lawrence with an expression of someone who wanted to believe, but was still afraid. Uncle Lawrence, can I ask you a question? Of course. Why do you want me here? Lawrence thought about the answer for a long moment. Because I spent many years of my life being selfish. Now I want to spend the rest of my life being useful. And you give me the chance to be useful. What do you mean? Caleb, you need a family. And I need to be the kind of father I should have been all along. We need each other. Caleb smiled for the first time since he had arrived. Can I call you Dad? You can call me whatever you want. But if you want to call me Dad, it will be the greatest honor of my life. Dad. Yes, son. Thank you for not giving up on me. Caleb, I will never give up on you. That's a promise I made to myself. I will never abandon a child again. That night, Lawrence slept better than he had in years. His house was full, his family was complete, and for the first time in his life, he was truly at peace with who he was. End of story. So, what did you think of this story of new beginnings and second chances? Tell us here in the comments where you're watching from and what touched your heart the most. Do you think Lawrence truly managed to redeem himself? Leave your honest opinions. We absolutely love reading each and every one of your comments. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other emotional stories like this one.